Raven's Flight by Diane Sylvie. Chapter 8. Raven glanced at the graffiti-covered wall beside her. Her eyes were riveted to the bottom left-hand corner. A bare paw print. It had to be some sort of sign of talisman to guide her to her sister. She turned the corner, heading east toward the grain silos on the waterfront and crossed the concrete bridge toward the pier. The street abruptly stopped at Campbell Avenue, where dozens of railway tracks, mud oozing from the base of the ties, veered left and right. 5 Chinese men walked toward her, carrying on their backs heavy baskets filled with fish. A number of abandoned aluminum buildings stood on the far side of the tracks, coated in dirt. Seagulls roosted on their window ledges. Inside the first building, people wearing white aprons and black gumboots filleted fish. They iced the fillets, then put them in boxes stacked for delivery. The floor was glossy with silvery fish scales and running water. Raven continued down the dock, listening to the seagulls fighting over fish guts. The other warehouses had heavy padlocks on the doors, but the last warehouse door she came to was slightly ajar. A raspy voice from inside barked out orders. "Vern, get to work. This shipment has to be ready to sail tonight. We're getting a good price for the bare gallbladders, hides, and paws." "How much, Stan?" Another man she couldn't see, but supposed was Vern, asked. "For this load? I'd say around $250,000. Stan ventured. Vern let out a long whistle, but stopped abruptly when he heard a noise outside. He didn't want anyone sniffling around, so he went to investigate. Raven was so intent on spying on them, she didn't see a man sneak up behind her. A huge hand grabbed her arm, roughly twisting it behind her back. "What are you doing here?" Vern snarled. She recognized him. He was one of the poachers she had seen in the campground near the home the day before she left for the city. Marcy's small body lay crumpled on the coal tile wheelhouse floor. The gash on her head throbbed and the pain intensified as she struggled to get up. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned her head to face a slight, pale, blonde girl about her own age. "Are you all right?" the girl asked. "Who are you?" Marcy blurted. "Where are we? Why are we here? Did they capture you too?" "I live on the ship. I help cook with the meals. Why are you here?" "My name is Marcy. I was looking for my friend's sister when they caught me and tossed me in here." "What's your friend's name?" the girl hedged. "JL. JL? You know JL. He's my brother. I'm Melissa." "Thank goodness. I found you. How long have you been here? Did they hurt you? What happened?" Marcy blurted, both relieved and terrified. "It's a long story. A few months ago, some men came by my school driving expensive cars, flashing money around, dressed to the nines. They said they were from Vancouver and looking for a good time. It was a change from the local scene, and besides, they invited us to parties and paid for everything. After a few nights of the good life, they said they wanted to hire us to work in the city. Told us we would make a killing. They said we'd soon have enough money to buy anything we wanted. Most of us were bored and hadn't found summer jobs, and we're fighting with our parents. School was almost out, and we would have been looking for work in the next few weeks anyway. We packed our bags, and after a final blast in town, we piled into 2 cars and headed for Vancouver. We'd figured we'd call our parents once we had an address and started work. When we got to Hope, 2 vans transporting kids from towns to the interior joined us. In Vancouver, they separated us by age. The younger children were ordered to walk the kiddie stroll at Franklin and Victoria, and then they sent the older group to a big apartment downtown. They held a party that night, but spiked the drinks so that we were unconscious when they transported us to the locked rooms aboard the ship. They could have done anything. We were defenseless. I remember walking up the ship, shackled to a bed in a locked cell. I was terrified. There was no telling where we would end up or what they would do to us. Eventually, we learned that some of them would be weeded out to go to training camp in Alberta, and then they'd be rerouted through Vancouver. The group I was with was going to be sent to some port in Asia via Seattle and Hawaii. When the ship docked in Asia, the others were sold at a private auction. I was sick, so they couldn't sell me. The cook said he could use a hand in the kitchen, so I was spared. He nursed me back to health, and I've been working on the boat ever since. They keep me under constant supervision. They don't want a snitch who could try to make a break for it." "When is this load set to sail?" Marcy asked. "The ship sails tonight. Where's JL? Why isn't he here? Is he okay? Melissa said, worried. JL was shot. I think he's going to pull through, but I don't know for sure. It's my fault, isn't it? He came to the city to look for me. I could be responsible for my brother's death. If JL died, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I couldn't face my family. Melissa sobbed. He won't die, but if he did, it would be even more important that you got home. Would you let your brother's sacrifice be in vain? He would want you to be safe, Marcy said firmly. I know you're right. Why did I ever run away in the first place? Marcy put her arms around Melissa as they sat huddled on the floor, each of them wishing she was at the hospital with JL and that all of this was just a bad dream. Vern had Raven by the arm, but not for long. She kicked him as hard as she could and took off running. Stop! He yelled after her. Stan came running out of the warehouse. What's going on? He demanded. It's that brat, the Salal picker we ran into in Egmont. She was spying on us. I didn't think you'd want any witnesses, Vern said, rubbing his sore leg. Forget her. There's no time. We need to get the cash from Lonnie. Let's load before there's more trouble, Stan ordered. Vern hobbled back inside the warehouse. They quickly packed the contraband, loaded the boxes into a dolly, and wheeled it to the truck parked out back. Vern hoisted the boxes onto the truck and jumped in. Raven realized Stan had said Lonnie. It had to be the same guy from Marcy's journal. Maybe they would lead her to her sister. Raven watched from her vantage point behind some nearby crates as they drove to a pier a short distance away. She parked on the dock beside a ship and walked up to the gangplank. Raven followed on foot and crouched near the truck. A few minutes later, they walked off the ship with a deckhand, involved in a heated discussion. Why can't you give us our money? Stan demanded. I told you, the captain has the money, and I'm not supposed to leave my post, the deckhand said. Well, I want it, and fast, Stan yelled. I'll take you to him, the deckhand snapped. Raven saw a cell phone on the seat of Stan's truck only a few feet away. She reached in the window, grabbed it, and dialed 911. State what your emergency is, your location, and your name, the operator said. I've uncovered a smuggling ring operation at Vancouver dockyards. I'm in the first pier east of Campbell Avenue. My name is Raven. Please send the police immediately. We'll send someone right away. Do not attempt to deal with the situation yourself, the operator said. But Raven had already hung up and walked halfway up the gangplank before the operator finished talking. She searched the ship from one end to the other, careful to avoid the crew. She walked stealthily from door to door, jiggling the lock handles in hope that one would be open. She cupped her hands around her eyes to peer into dark windows. At the wheelhouse window, she jumped back in fright. Her sister's face was looking back at her. They both started whispering through the thick glass at once. Marcy strained to say, Raven? Is that you? What are you doing here? Thank goodness I found you. What a relief. How do I get you out of here? Melissa's face appeared at the window as well. There's a spare key on the nail beside the stove in the galley. The same key will open the room directly below us where the other kids are being held. Do you know where the galley is? Melissa asked. Yes, I passed it a few minutes ago. I'll be right back, Raven promised. She ran into the galley, grabbed the key, and raced toward Marcy's room. She vaulted up the steps of the wheelhouse, unlocked the door, and threw her arms around her sister. Raven! Is it really you? How did you find us? Marcy asked, relieved, but incredulous. I've been staying in your room. I read your diary, and you wrote something about a dream and a pier and someone named Lonnie. It was a long shot, but I was desperate. On the way, I met a guy named Norm who knew Lonnie had a warehouse down here. I overheard some poachers talk about doing business with the same guy, so I followed them onto the boat. I called the police before I boarded, but Lonnie or the crew might discover us before the reinforcements arrive. You two get off the ship so you can tell the police where you are if we're not off ourselves by then, Raven said. But we can't leave you and the others. Only the sentries have keys for their handcuffs. It could be dangerous, Melissa protested. Listen, there's no time to argue. Go, Raven ordered. Marcy and Melissa hurried down the gangplank and hid behind crates on the pier, awaiting the sirens and patrol cars. Raven raced back downstairs to the crew's quarters. She entered and tiptoed over a sleeping sentry. His keys were fastened to his belt loop. She unclipped the key ring without waking him and raced to the room where the hostages were being held, praying one of the keys would be the right one to set them free. I'm here to help you escape, Don't ask questions. Just pass this key around to unlock the handcuffs and be ready to run, Raven ordered, where she burst through the door. How do you know we can trust you? One boy asked. Another 20 faces looked to her for proof. They were regular kids, like those she went to school with, despite their disheveled appearance and tired, strung-out expressions. It really doesn't matter if you can trust me or not. I don't see how you can be in any more trouble than you are in now, do you? Raven pointed out. Marcy and Melissa peered cautiously over the top of the crates. 5 men were walking up the pier toward the ship. Marcy recognized Lonnie's tall frame, but didn't know the other 4 men. When she looked up at the ship, she saw Raven in plain view, the hostages walking noiselessly in single file behind her. They were sitting ducks. At that moment, 4 patrol cars rounded the corner and screeched to a stop at the pier. Lonnie and the others reached for their guns. An officer jumped out, pointed the gun, and yelled, "Hold your fire! Put your weapons on the ground and lie face down!" All 5 men fell to the ground and were soon swarmed by officers and placed in handcuffs. The police loaded them into their cruisers and read them their rights. Meanwhile, the port authorities seized the ship, including the captain and crew, and ushered the teenagers to safety. They would have to call their parents and give their testimonies at the station. The officer who had investigated JL's shooting on the night before took their testimonies and remembered Raven. After taking down the details of Melissa and Marcy's stories, he passed on the news that JL was out of danger and recovering. Both Melissa and Marcy planned to visit him as soon as they finished the paperwork at the station. As long as Lonnie, his brother, and their goons were put behind bars, the girls would finally be safe. Later that afternoon, Melissa phoned home, but the phone just rang and rang. She thought this was odd. They were rarely out in the evening. "I should phone home too," Marcy said to Raven. "The store won't be open until tomorrow morning," Raven said. "Right. I forgot about that. Let's take the bus to the hospital then. I hope they'll let us see JL. "It's after visiting hours," Melissa objected. "Well, maybe we can bend the rules? If we're lucky, someone will look the other way and let us visit for a few minutes," Marcy replied. During the ride to the hospital, Melissa and Marcy fell silent, both thinking about JL and how much he meant to each of them. He just had to pull through. "We're here," Raven said as she got off the Canby Street stop. They went west on 10th Street until they got to the main doors. The trio walked quietly toward the receptionist desk. "Could you please tell me which room Johnny Latimer is in?" Melissa said. "It's after visiting hours," the receptionist said. Have you come from out of town?" "Yes," Melissa said, recalling her ordeal in her hometown in the Okanagan. "Well, I guess you can go see him for just a minute. He's in intensive care. Go down the hall, to the end, turn left. And remember, just 2 minutes," she said kindly. Marcy and Melissa walked down the darkened hall certainly. They found the room and inched the door open. He lay so still, hooked up to oxygen and IV. Next to the bed, a woman stirred in a chair, her face partly covered by a blanket. "Can I help you? What do you want?" A muffled voice asked groggily, her head still turned away from them. "Mom, is that you?" Melissa cried in astonishment. "Melissa! Oh, God, I thought you were dead," her mother said, both relieved and shocked. Melissa raced over to her mother and threw her arms around her. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry, so sorry. Can you ever forgive me?" "You're back now, sweetheart. That's all that really matters. I'm so relieved. I must call your father right away. You know, we never stopped praying. JL would be able to find you," she said as she stroked Melissa's hair. Melissa? Groaned JL. "I'm here, Johnny. I'm all right. Marcy is here too," Melissa said softly, introducing Raven and Marcy to her mother. "I think we should go out in the hall and talk. Johnny needs his sleep," Mrs. Latimer suggested. As soon as she closed the door, Melissa confronted her mother with a barrage of questions. "How is he, Mom? What's the matter with him? When did you get here? What did the doctor say? Can we stay even though it's after visiting hours?" "Hold on. One question at a time. The specialist said JL is going to live, but the bullet hit his spine. The doctor doesn't know yet if the paralysis is temporary, if he'll ever recover. The next few days will be crucial. Even if he does get back to the use of his legs, he's looking at months of therapy. This is all my fault. If he hadn't come searching for me, he never would have been shot," Melissa wailed. "Listen, Melissa, he needs you to be strong. He needs all of us to help him through this ordeal. The important thing is you're both okay," Marcy said calmly. Marcy and Raven left Melissa and Mrs. Latimer to catch up on the months they'd been apart and the day's dramatic events. After exchanging their home addresses and phone numbers so they could keep in touch, Marcy asked for a few minutes alone with JL. She held his hand tenderly, then kissed him goodbye before slipping silently out the door.